Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we are going to be working on our very first WALL-E speed build. And I think this has been pretty highly requested, not just in the save file, but specifically for Evergreen Harbor. For Evergreen Harbor, we really have a lot of theming that has to do with trash cleanup, eco-friendly, and maybe somewhat leaning towards futuristic with a lot of the technology that's included in this pack. So right off the bat, when this got introduced, I knew that this would be a really good opportunity to do some WALL-E inspired builds. And originally, I think that WALL-E might have ended up in Del Sol Valley, but I'm really excited that we did get Evergreen Harbor so that I could do a few more lots based around it than maybe I would have been able to do in any of the given worlds, because basically whenever we get a brand new world, that opens up more lots, more opportunity for me to really do a deep dive into some of these movies and just include more content in general. So I am always really excited when we get a new world for that very reason, and I think we're going to be able to do some really interesting stuff, including today's build that I am very, very excited to show you guys. I am in love with this. I love how this turned out. It reminds me very much of something that I created before I was doing the Disney save that I would consider to be one of my all-time favorite builds of my own. I called that the futuristic stacked apartment complex, and it was basically this container style home stacked on top of one another in a very tall manner on top of like a skyscraper. I might have even built it in San Myshuno, and then the outside of it was completely covered in advertising. And I really like the idea, and I think this is obviously not a very unique idea, but I think we obviously as a society really are leaning more towards doing a lot of advertising. Pretty much anywhere we can put it, we add it. And it's getting to the point where sometimes I'm doing something or using something and I'm like, wow, I'm surprised this doesn't have ads on it yet. Like even certain streaming platforms and stuff like that, like Disney Plus doesn't do ad breaks and stuff. And I know obviously that's for different reasons. Like people would very much complain if Disney Plus added ads into the middle of the movies, myself included. However, it is getting like kind of crazy. There's constant advertising everywhere, and it's to the point where we can all kind of assume that leading into the future, we might have even more everywhere, literally everywhere that you could put it. And that's definitely an idea that's depicted in WALL-E. So if you've never seen WALL-E, which I do highly, highly recommend it, even just going through and rewatching the bits that I did to do this speed build and prepare for some future ones that we have coming up, I couldn't get over the fact of like how good the animation is, first of all, and it is so bone chilling. Like it is such a sad, weird commentary on humans and on society. Even from the opening scenes of the movie, I just was like, oh my god, I cannot believe how bad Earth looks and how crazy that could be the reality for us someday if certain things don't change. And it's just a really big moment to like comment on, even just like the world situation. It's kind of a dark movie considering that it's Disney, considering that it's Pixar, and I think it really stands out in that regard. So I do recommend that you go and watch it. It is on Disney Plus if you happen to have it. So basically the movie is a tiny little robot that cleans up Earth, and he's one of the last ones there, or he's being shown as or depicted as like one of the very few. And then a different robot comes to Earth to look for life forms, specifically plants, and she does end up finding one, and then she has to return home to a different ship that is off planet where most of the humans are being housed. And on that ship is this build that we are currently working on. This is called the Lido Deck. And the Lido Deck is basically like one of the main portions of the ship where they have just this big open area and there's lots of stuff going on. Specifically, it is like one big pool surrounded by a bunch of little pools, and then as you go up surrounding it, there is more advertising, more businesses, more food, clothing, all sorts of stuff being advertised around it in this big like kind of city looking landscape. And even one of the characters in the movie makes a comment that she didn't even know that they had a pool because it doesn't get used. It's basically like this big circular water in the middle of the deck that nobody even uses. There's nobody swimming in any of the scenes. Everybody's very much like planted in their chairs and not interested, and most of them don't even know that they have it. However, I saw this as a really cool opportunity to do a public pool lot, which we have not done in the Disney save so far, and I think obviously there will be many opportunities to include pools from various movies. A lot of Disney movies are centered around water, but it is a little bit more rare to have a specific scene or a specific chunk of a movie that takes place around a pool. And most of the major conflict of the movie actually takes place in this exact location. So we're going to take it as an opportunity to do a really, really cool futuristic style pool that will be so much different compared to like pretty much any other pool that I might add to the Disney Save. When you think pool, you really do think like maybe we'll have a kiddie pool, maybe we'll have a main one, and then there will be a bathhouse, maybe there's somewhere to get something to eat, and then you've got some chairs kind of scattered around, and that's your pool, and you go there to swim, and it's very basic. This one is anything but. This one has layers, this one has places to eat, this one has a bar, a lazy river, so many different platforms that you can go into and out of, and then obviously the required bathhouse and changing area. So it ends up looking very futuristic. We are actually building down in Port Promise, the area closest to the water. And in the movie, this area is shown as being like a huge dome that has a faux sun and moon cycle going on over the top. And I did want to add something like that, like maybe do one big dome over the whole thing, almost as if they are trying to protect the area from some of the smog and pollution around. Unfortunately, the roofing system in The Sims 4 is very complex, and it doesn't really like if you're working with multiple heights and placing custom roofing like over everything. It's a little bit tricky, but I did try it originally. And also, when you do put a huge dome over a particular lot, it does get a little bit in the way visually when you're trying to play. You would have to play basically with like the roof down. And I liked it so much the way that it turned out. To cover it in just like this big dome really didn't feel right to me. So we might use that idea later. That's definitely something I have done for previous builds, but I actually like the way that this came out, and it still feels very closed off from the surrounding area. It ends up looking very much like a stadium, any kind of stadium, like a football stadium, baseball stadium, the way that it is dug out in the middle and then sort of escalates and scales up. And in the beginning, you guys could see that I was building on the first level, and then there was a cut, and I did dig the pool down one more level. Recently, I saw somebody do something similar where in their save file, they were working on a build in Willow Creek, and they had cut out the basement and then removed the ceiling so that you have this area that you can cut down into. And again, that's just one of those things that I always forget is a possibility in The Sims, but I've used it 3 times in Evergreen Harbor so far, and I really wanted to have a lot that was focused more on like leveling in this way. Whereas everything basically so far has felt very flat in this world. We've built some residentials that obviously they have tiers, but there's nothing really going on with the terrain. There's nothing crazy going on. And then the junkyard, the fire station, the up house, nothing too much like crazy wise, like nothing that feels a little bit more whimsical and out of the box, which is some of my favorite stuff to build in this game. So I wanted to really make sure that this felt very futuristic, has lots of layering, lots of interesting platforming and stairs. And it gets to the point when you go to the end of the video that it looks like it won't even function. Like truly, I was very worried. I got to a point of no return, and I was like, wow, when I go to playtest this, if certain things aren't working with the way that I believe that they will, we're gonna have some problems. Like, I'm gonna have to make some major changes. But they did end up all working, and it works really, really well. I'm so excited with it. I do want to mention that the circular pool trick, if you have never seen that before, that is not an idea of my own. That is, I don't know if she actually came up with this idea, but I watched a tutorial by another Sims YouTuber named Kate Emerald, and I will leave her link down below for the tutorial on the round pools. It's basically the kind of octagonal pools that we know and love how to make in The Sims, and then you can take the base game round fountain and size it up and raise it up to the surface so that you can get the illusion that the pool is actually round, and it is still functional. And then we have a pool one layer up that I am calling like a lazy river, and it outlines the entire area, and The Sims do seem to go more towards that. I believe it's because they enter on this level, so they're going to immediately jump into the pool that is like closest to them. But towards the end of me playtesting this lot, they did eventually go down to the bottom level and play a little bit more in the round pools, which was really cool. So then you have the two different versions of like pools. You've got the long ones that you can do more of like a brisk jog through, and then you've got the round ones that tend to be a little bit more leisure. As far as the general shape and the designs with the different tile types and all of that, that is 100% taken from the movie. There is a specific reference of the Lido deck that I was using, and we didn't have a ton of room here. Like, this isn't a very big lot, especially for everything that I end up doing. I did run out of room at the very end. So ideally, I would have liked maybe a step up as far as lot size, and I probably could have been able to do a little bit more with the layering system. However, it comes out pretty close. I'm actually really happy how it so resembles it in like this interesting Sims kind of way. It's as close as like a Sims interpretation that you could possibly get when you're trying to translate stuff like that over. Because obviously we've got so many different game mechanics at play here that it gets a little bit tricky sometimes to do something exactly like how you're seeing in a different media form. Now, another idea that I had, I really wanted this place to have like tons of chairs, because one of the things in the movie is that when they get to the Axiom, you see humans for the first time, and the humans are all in these floating chairs that they clearly do not leave ever. They show a scene where one of the characters falls out of one of these floating chairs, and they actually have to have like robot assistants to come over and help them out of it. And they do comment later on in the movie that that might have something to do with like bone density and gravity and being out in space for like 700 plus years. Eventually your body would stop functioning the way that we have it on Earth due to gravity and stuff like that. So they don't walk. None of the characters are able to walk on their own, and they all have these chairs that float everywhere, which is one of the reasons that they don't use the pool. And each of the chairs has its own screen that is literally like coming around the chair and plastered right in front of the person's face, and not a single person ever turns their screen off and looks around them. It's like obviously another moment where they've commentated on current like societal things, but even back then when the movie was made, it was very much prevalent. So I knew I wanted to do something like that, and I wasn't really sure exactly how to go about it. But obviously when you think pool, you do think some of these like spa loungy chairs. So I've put them basically everywhere, and then I really wanted to see if I could get some TVs to fit in front of every single chair, because I think that really ties in the idea that like you're at this beautiful pool, it's very futuristic, there's so much to do. You could have a literal blast here, spend all day and night, and instead you end up sitting here in front of a TV. That's like so WALL-E. That's basically what the movie is trying to talk about. So every single chair that is located in this lot has its own TV planted in front of it. They are using the brackets, I think from Spa Day. We have like a 90-degree angle sculpture piece, and those sized down with some smaller flat screen TVs sized down, each placed in front of a chair. It's very funny. I think that it is like, it's so annoyingly funny that even just for the Sims in general, when Sims enter a lot, if there's a TV, I don't know if it does this in anyone else's game, but for me personally, I have this experience that if a Sim enters a lot and there's a TV, it's the first thing that they want to do. They go run off and they turn a TV on. And when I was playtesting this lot, that's exactly what happened. There were so many Sims here, and they're just not even interested in the pool. Or they'll be halfway in the pool, halfway watching a TV. So I've added multiple TVs, not just in front of the chairs, but on the different layers near the food court area, around like the pathways and stuff. And so they'll end up sitting and just watching TV instead of using the pool. I think that that's so funny. So I definitely love the way that that came out as well. Other than these main two pool areas, we do have a couple more layers going on here, and I really wanted there to be multiple walkways that you could go around to do certain things that were on different levels. So we have, I think, 4 levels functioning here, and the first 2 are pools. The third one is the restaurant and eating area, and you can see that starting to take shape with the Discover University debug item, that sort of octagonal, weirdly shaped glass awning that I've morphed into one of the platforms. It does have some weird, like, little lines coming out of it. I believe it was probably used as like a parking awning in one of the worlds, and so it has like the parking lines already built into the object, which is really a shame because I just hate it so much. Basically, when you're on the second level, if you have the walls down, you can see those lines, and it does drive me a little bit crazy to the point where I thought about getting rid of it, but I really do like the way that it looks. It's raised up just enough that it provides shade to the food court area, and it's a different shape compared to some of the other awnings that I've used here, just like basic roofing and the eco lifestyle ones that you can actually craft. It was a different one that had a very similar vibe, and I was really excited to try and use it. So I did end up keeping it, and I know it might annoy some of you. It definitely wasn't like my favorite thing when I was playtesting this lot, but I am going to leave it. And obviously, if you don't love it, you can get rid of it. If the lines really bother you, you can always remove it. So I like to make that as a little disclaimer, because sometimes people get really, really frustrated with the things that I do in my speed builds. And I completely understand, by the way, because I watch other people and I would say like, oh, I wouldn't have made that decision, or, oh, I don't love the way that that came out. So I completely understand that. However, you are always free to download my lot and get rid of anything that you don't like. So as far as getting like angry at me, I can't fully understand that. So just keep that in mind. I don't know. Most 99.9% of you are awesomely, amazingly kind, brilliant, literally say the kindest things to me that I cannot fathom on a daily basis, and I get the literal nicest messages. Some of them bring me to tears, and like I'll be like, you've literally brought me to tears. I'm not kidding. Like, some of the stuff you guys say, I truly do not deserve. It is way too kind. And then there's 1% of the time where people just say things that are so unnecessary, but it's part of the gig, you know? You get used to it. It's probably important to know that a large portion of this build has been cut out. So I got back from my camping trip on Monday. I was so worn out. I could not fathom sitting down to try to do anything. I just knew that it was going to come out like crap. So I did start working on Tuesday morning, and I pretty much worked all day on this, which normally I will have to take a break and get to a point where I'm not making anything work. Everything doesn't look good. I'm making poor decisions. But this one was coming super naturally to me, and I was just so excited to keep going, and really get to a point where I was over the moon about it, and everything was just working out so well. So I built basically all day Tuesday, and this ended up being almost fully finished. But I did have to cut a lot of it out. Some of it was a lot of searching through Debug. So in Debug, and I'll just explain this really quickly since we have a moment, and a lot of people ask me this question. There are 2 different categories of debug in the game. There is the debug catalog, which is the one that has originally been there for a very long time, and it includes a lot of objects that your Sims use that require something else. So like pots and pans from the oven and food items, things like that. And then there is a debug category of items that the Sims team uses to build the worlds. So those will be trees, rocks, awnings, things that you see around the various worlds. Most of that stuff is included in a separate catalog. And that stuff has more recently become available. That was not always available since the beginning of the game. It was only... It might have been like 6 months ago now, so it has been around for a little bit, but when it was added, it was a big deal. It was over 1,000 items or something like that, and it's made the building game a totally different scenario. Things have gotten a little bit crazy, and in general, the catalog increase was so necessary, and it made things a lot easier. So from City Living and Discover University and a little bit from Eco Lifestyle, we ended up with a lot of these commercial advertising items, a lot of like neon signs and things that you would see on top of buildings, more so than we've even had originally added, because we do have some of those in the normal catalog of the game, but we got a lot more that were added in Debug, and they came in so helpful for this build. This build would not look like what it does at the end here if I didn't have all of these extra items. I did have the idea to sort of replicate the way that they have this beautiful pool on bottom, and then up at the top surrounding it, they're completely surrounded by advertising. So we've got the extra TVs that I kind of in my head was like, oh, that's more advertising, more commercials constantly running, more screens in general. And then I had to do a lot of digging through Debug to try and find basically as many advertising items as I could, and then just plaster them all over the upper levels of this build so that you are completely overwhelmed. It looks crazy. It is so like not something that you would actually see today. Like imagine a beautiful pool like this is built and it's so futuristic, and then the top levels are literally just covered in advertising and commercial stuff. It would be mind-boggling. I would be so frustrated if I showed up to like a beautiful spa and this is how it looked. But it very much represents the movie and a lot of the themes that they were talking about. And it does look a lot like what they had going on in the movie as far as like this specific area goes. So we've got a lot of items going on the upper levels, and I did have to cut a large portion of it out because a lot of it was just me scraping through the debug, and that is a whole mess in and of itself. Any moment here there will be like a large cut, and we will lead into screenshots where you guys can see the finished product with all of the advertising fully done, and me adding neon signs, lights to like light it up, make it look really crazy and heavy. This place actually looks really nice at night too. I think that it looks pretty cool. Even some of these screenshots during the day really don't do it justice. I think that the nighttime is even cooler. We also do have the main tower in the middle there, which in the movie is like the ship's captain's quarters and where the captain lives at the top and like commands the ship and everything. But I've used it as the bathhouse because that's a required thing for a pool. So down bottom you will find a couple of stalls and a couple of more futuristic trash cans and all that good stuff for your Sims. So that is basically going to be the end of today's build. I really hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I am so in love with how this turned out, but let me know what you thought of it down in the comment section below. Stay tuned for more WALL-E because it is coming. I've got many ideas planned for it. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon and get access to exclusive perks like Works in Progress, my private Discord server, voting in polls, reading about characters before they go live, all of that good stuff, that will be linked down below as well as at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post. And I will talk to you all in the next one.